Hello, we are live. We are live. And thank you for tuning in or catching the replay. This is Nettie Long Poetry, and I am celebrating my second anniversary year of They Took My Choice Away. And I wanted to do something really big this month and bring on um, activists and authors and people who have experienced similar background situations like myself, sexual assault as a child. And I wanted to bring on people that are doing the legwork out there. So, all the way from South Africa, please welcome my guest, Martin Pelders. I'm sorry, I don't know. One second as I add him in onto the stream. And welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Nettie. I like the Pelders is the first one I've heard. That's original.
Sorry.
No problem.
I felt like it went right to it. Not right.
Yeah, it's one of those names that just catches a lot of people. I'm used to it. I've been called Elvis and all sorts of things. But
Elvis.
Yeah.
Well, I could see whether you could say come up with that. But man, and listen, I had to have you on, and I'm first of all, thank you for answering the call. Thank you for celebrating with me.
Pleasure.
But I feel like this is a topic that it just can never be you can never not talk enough about because it still resonates in people. Like they feel dirty, and they don't often talk about their traumas, and a lot of it has to do with just not even dealing with their trauma, and they don't know it. They don't even realize that, a lot of our behaviors is a direct correlation to our traumas. And I know that you know a lot about that.
A little,
but
just a little.
well, I know that you are supporting the men in this world, and let's talk about your MatrixMen. Tell us about that.
Well, I founded MatrixMen 12 years ago. So, you've got to kind of go into my history a little bit because my life started changing in 2010 when there was the show on Oprah Winfrey called The 200 Men with Tyler Perry. And a lot of the 200 men are now my friends today. We're really close and we communicate quite a lot. And it was in hearing their stories that I began to realize, like you said, a lot of us don't actually realize that our behaviors today are connected to our trauma as children, right? And when I heard the 200 men talking, I realized that my trauma in my life was kind of shaped by my childhood. To me, it was, that was whilst I was growing up, it was normal. This is what people did to their children. This is what people did to children, neighbors, men, women. I kind of had them all, And
wow.
It set me on a path of absolute destruction, anger, alcoholism, sexual addiction. Man, I was, if it moved, I slept with it, or I tried to anyway. And life wasn't fulfilling. Life was kind of a tragedy. And I only realized that when I was 44, I think, when I saw the show, and I dove into healing. And in those days, we still had dial-up internet. I don't know if you remember dial-up internet. And so I would log on, and instead of doing 5 hours of porn a night, I would sit on malesurvivor.org for 5 hours talking to other men or just reading stories. I just devoured voraciously. All I wanted to do is find out what the effects of sexual abuse were on adult men. How did it impact on our lives? And I just studied and I read Mike Lew's books, and I got as much as I could and just read about it and studied. And it was a night when I started remembering stuff that had happened to me that I'd really, really suppressed the memories. And when they started emerging, I was shaken to my core. I really was. And I remember crying, and I looked up at the ceiling. I said, God, why did you let this happen to me? I was just a child. And the weirdest thing is the sentence popped into my head that said, if it hadn't happened to you, who would go on to help others? It was the weirdest thing. And in that moment, I kind of wiped away my past, gave me hope and gave me a future. And it's not been an easy future, but it's been something I'm extremely passionate about. And that night in 2011, MatrixMen was born, and came up with the concept. And I walked out and I said to my ex-wife at the time, I said, I'm going to start this group to support men. And she said, oh, I was wondering when this would come. So I was like, oh, okay. She might have been quite narcissistic, but she really understood me well. And I said, I just got to think of a good name. And she said, why don't you call it MatrixMen? And I was like, what the hell is that? You know? And she said, well, go and study up what is geological matrices. And I went and I did some homework, and I found out that a geological matrix, I don't know if you know, when you walk into these eclectic shops, there's always like these big rocks, and they break them open, and inside these rocks, there's all these crystals, right? And that's called the matrix. And that, to me, kind of resembled men. Oh, you see? That was the one I told you about, right?
All right.
We got back
we can hear you. It's all good.
Yeah. So that was, and I looked at it and I was like, wow, that kind of resembles men. You know, they form this hard outer shell that's kind of impenetrable, but when you manage to crack it open, they're gems inside. You know? So, and that's what we do. We kind of form this hard shell, and we become really abusive and angry and all sorts of things as men. And sorry, I just want to see if I can get a better. And yeah, you know, once you break us open and we start dealing with that childhood trauma, we become absolute gems. We become great husbands, great fathers. You know, it's just needing to talk to somebody about what happened to us.
Right.
And that's the hard part. And this is where toxic masculinity comes into the. I'm a great proponent for masculinity, healthy masculinity, but there's so many toxic aspects to it that, and these are the things we talk about. You know, I get real about these things and
you
say,
have
you know what,
to be real. You absolutely have to be real, because if you don't, how relatable are you going to be, and how are you going to reach the masses? You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Like, I've had to have and share some uncomfortable, you know, backstories of my bringing up and hard truths that I had to come to face with. Otherwise, it was going to be, you know, that monkey on my back. That wouldn't allow me to, you know what I mean, actually be free. You know, and I think freedom from past traumas is so relevant today. And we don't often see it. We don't often get to even touch it, reach it. It's not even reachable because of our hard truths. So yeah, elaborate on that. The importance of, you know, having to tell and be honest with your true feelings, and how therapeutic it really is.
Yeah, you know, for me, the biggest eye opener was listening to the 200 Men on that show and talking about their deepest pain. And I kind of looked at it. And the weird thing was that it takes so many stories for you to actually resonate. Eventually, you'll find one that connects with you. And then you go, oh, that's me. Oh, right, you know. Because the weird thing is, I listened to these 200 men talking, and each one of them was like, yeah, so when I was a child, this person raped me, or this person molested me, or this person did this to me. And my brain kept going like, oh, that's not me. That's not me. That's not me. I wasn't raped like that, you know? So there was still this whole element of denial going on in my head, you know? And it wasn't until one of the guys right at the end of the show stood up and he said, I just want to say something to you guys who are fathers. You love your children too much. You will never hurt them. Oh, man, that was like a punch in my gut. I tell you something. My daughter must have been, 7 at the time, 6, 7 at the time. And I really, really started avoiding her from the age of 3 because there was this demon in my head that kept telling me that I was going to hurt her. You know, I kept thinking I'm gonna sexually abuse my own daughter, you know. So it was almost like, you know, these comic strips or these comics where you have the little devil comes up on one shoulder and he says, you're gonna hurt her, and then the little angel comes up and goes, no, you won't, you love her too much. That was the war going on inside my head, you know, and the only way I could deal with it was just to dive into a bottle of booze, you know. So I just drank more and more. So instead of coming home and having a tot or two, I would come home and have a whole glass. I would just down it. Because I knew if I got drunk enough, fast enough, my ex would say, you can't touch our child, you know? And that's kind of the goal. That's what I was going for. I didn't want to touch her because I was so afraid of myself, you know? And that was scary because I'd spent 10 years trying to have a child. We went through infertility treatments. We spent fortunes on trying to have a daughter. And eventually this child comes along and this war starts happening in my head. And I'm like, what the hell, man? You know? And so it was, so I realized then, I was like, you know what? It's through the telling of my story that I'm going to give other men permission to heal. And that's what I started doing. You know what I mean? I started telling my story. I would tell my story in newspapers, on the radio, on television. Anybody that would listen to me, I would tell my story. Even customers of mine, you know, I was just like, hey, this is what happened to me. And I'd start talking to them. And it's amazing how eventually people started listening. And then people started sending me letters going like, hey, you know, I resonate with what you're talking about. And can I come and see you? Or can we chat online? And, you know, that sort of stuff. So it kind of grew, you know, everybody goes, wow, MatrixMen is doing this and this and this. But like when I look at it, it's like, it's small, you know. I wish I had like an international organization with thousands of men coming in to get supported, but it's not like that, you know. I mean, we got to start off with the one or two or the three or the fours, you know, and eventually it'll grow. It'll grow organically. It will grow naturally the way it should.
Wow, you just gave us a mouthful. Like, let me go here, but some of your posts that I actually reposted was behavior is the language of trauma.
Yeah, I love that one.
And children will show you before they tell you that they are in distress.
Yeah, I love that one.
I mean, that was like powerful, and it's true. Like even in my delicate situation with my girls, like I had been sexually abused, had two twice in my life, and one was perpetual. That I was only limited, my resources was only limited to my experience. I never got rehabilitated. I never got help. I didn't get the counseling. I was a child, twice a child. And so I know all the behaviors leading up to my adulthood and how my relationships were a direct correlation to my past. And I was often in toxic relationships. Actually, they were all toxic relationships, even all the way down to my marriage. Didn't even realize. Thought I married the man of my dreams. Actually,
turns out to be
he
the
was
nightmare.
so different. He was just so different, and he was attentive, and he was a family man, and just exact opposite of what I've ever dated. And he was supposed to be a godly man. We were in church. You know what I mean? He just fit into the mold of what I had longed for in a believing, you know, father and God, you know, godly man. And then I realized you know, it was all taken away from me in a glimpse of an eye because I married a pedophile. And I'm only more talking about this now because the accountability of, you know, who we date and all of that that's like what I'm on that power trip right now. Like, no, we cannot leave our children a chance because we're not, you know, we are experiencing something that's so awesome, you know what I mean? And we're not vetting people properly. And so, we have to vet people. We have to vet people that are surrounding in our lives, especially if we've been hurt. And sometimes it's almost like, oh my God, I really can't trust myself. So when you said that about yourself, I can actually relate to that because when the kids were growing up, I was constantly telling them, you know, you don't let nobody touch you here. You don't let nobody touch you there. And even if it's me, you tell on me. You tell on me. Because I was so afraid of just hurting them or, you know, what if this, you know, in turn, you know, what if I end up being an abuser? I've had those feelings too. And so thank you for freeing me to be able to say this today for the first time that I too have had these thoughts that it is like a devil on one side and you know, and God speaking on the other side. And so just with that in itself, right? And that's just a little snippet of my story, but just in that in itself, you have to know that there can be peace in that. right?
Yeah.
But in order for you to even reach peace, you got to know who you are first. And so you're going to have to dig up the skeletons out of your closet, to address everything. I became a poet not by chance. It saved my life. It was through therapy, through
Yeah.
therapy. My therapist kept pushing me to write and kept pushing me to write and kept pushing me to write. And I didn't want to write. I didn't even want to read. I couldn't even muster up words to even say. You know what I'm saying? And you're trying to get me to write something. And
Yeah.
so
What's up with you?
I finally gave in. I wrote my first piece, and that first piece ended up being, I ended up performing at a women's conference for the very first time.
Wow.
I didn't know nothing about being a poet, but
Awesome.
but God crafted it in a way, that it was poetic. And I'm like, okay. And so I had to submit to that. And once I submitted to therapy and once I submitted to God's calling on my life, then I started to
Yeah.
see things, functioning the way it should. And I was able to see clearer, that I've
Yeah.
never seen before. And so I know that you've gotten your revelation, right? But what is the absolute goal from here?
For me, yeah, I think, like MatrixMen's focus this year is gonna be like men's mental health. Because I'm
Mm,
realizing that if we're talking about sexual abuse and childhood abuse and things, guys get very scared and they kind of withdraw from
true.
that, right? So my goal this year is we actually developing a mental health app that is going to be for men, staffed by men. So
Mm,
when a man wants to, he downloads the app. It's going to be free. When you hit, I want to chat to somebody, you're going to go through to a male counselor who's going to understand how men think, how men feel, how men comprehend the world, etc., etc.,
mm,
etc. So you're going to get that support that you really need. And then to make it national, firstly, to kind of move out national, have an office. We had an office for 8 months in Johannesburg, which is like our main business hub in South Africa. And in 8 months, I had over 200 men come through the doors just to talk. I mean, I had guys would come and just sit down with me and it's like, I just want to talk to you about my marriage, man. I'm really
mm,
struggling to understand this. And just sit there and just listen. You don't have to offer advice. You don't have to give solutions. You don't have to do anything. Just listen.
mm.
And the guys walk out there they go like, wow, thanks. I see things clearer now. So, we'll continue. I mean, we have a massive problem in South Africa, and research tells us that 44% of all men will have been sexually abused by the age of 18.
Say
You
that
know,
again. Say that again.
44% of men in this country have been sexually abused by the age of 18, right? And we're looking at girls, about 33.9% of girls will have suffered by the age of 16. So a lot more boys, sort of 4% more boys, because if you take that by the age of 16, it's about 38.6%. So more boys are in fact being sexually abused in this country than girls.
Yeah.
Now we're expecting these guys to grow up and be normal. How do we expect that? So we in South Africa, we have the highest rape stats in the world per capita. We have the
Yeah.
highest GBV stats per capita. We have the highest femicide. We have the highest human trafficking. We have all of this stuff going on. And I'm going like, people, can you not see why? Because we're not fixing these broken boys. We
Mm,
need to start fixing these broken boys. So one of our goals is going to be to get into the schools, to talk to the kids, and,
yeah.
and it's all about planting seeds, man. It's all about just planting seeds. I'm going to tell my story. I'll get other guys to share their stories, and we're just planting seeds. It's going to resonate with somebody somewhere along the line. And if we can save 4, 5, 6 people from being raped, great. That's 6 less broken people in the world. But also the scariest factor here is that boys that have been sexually abused are 4 times more likely to perpetrate a rape.
Mm,
4 times, and this is the thing, is what I get so angry with activists when they go like, well, the majority of abuse survivors don't go on to abuse. I'm going like, well, it depends on your perspective of abuse. You know what I mean? Sexual abuse isn't the only thing in the world, right? So
yeah.
there's physical, mental, emotional, financial, narcissistic abuse. I can tell you that, like, we all go on to abuse.
Mm.
given fact. You know what I mean? That suppressed anger comes out, and unfortunately, the only place that we feel safe enough to deal with it and to talk about it is at home with our families. You know, and every guy without fail, he comes in, he says, I'm tired of hurting the ones that I love the most. You know, they're always saying that. And it's like, I might not be hurting them physically, but my anger, you know, it's like one of the guys, the story resonates with me. There's two stories that kind of really stick with me, you know. And the one was like he went fishing with his family. His 3 sons and a daughter and his wife, I think. Anyway, he says, so he's like, and he throws out, and he gets a fish on the line, and he's reeling it in. And boy, just as it gets close to to land, boom, the fish gets off and gets away. And he says, he looked and he went, oh man. And he looked around and he saw his wife and his children backing away from him. They were just like all stepping back, you know. And he says, in that moment, I realized that like before he started group with us, he says, I would have exploded. I would have like started kicking pots and throwing fishing rods into the lake and going absolutely berserk because that, you know. So my family was expecting that rage to come out, and they were like shocked when I went, oh man, and they couldn't understand it, you know. So that's a good story, right? But the thing is, it impacted him in a way that he realized, wow, that is what my anger is doing to my family. They're walking on eggshells all the time. They're so afraid because they don't know what's going to trigger me, what's going to make me angry, what's going to set dad off, you know, what mood is he in when he comes home, you know, and that's a huge trauma for children, you know what I mean?
It is.
And then the other story was like a guy's driving along, and he's like, incredible road rage. This is the guy who would follow somebody who offended him on the road home. He would drive out of his way like 5 miles to go and shout at the guy and tell him that he's an a-hole and you know, get in his face and all, and then drive home and feel good about himself. So one day he's driving along and this guy cuts in front of him, and the next thing he hears from he's like, I think she must have been 4 or 5, his daughter. She starts F-bombing and a-holing and from the back seat. And he suddenly looked and he went, oh my word, that's me, you know? And he realized what his road rage was doing to his kids, you know? And that was like, again, one of those impactful stories where he realized the impact that he was having on his children and he kind of calmed it down, you know? So therapy works, man. Group is such an amazing dynamic. When you get 6, 7 guys sitting around a table talking about their childhoods and what happened to them, wow, it's powerful. It really is. It changes lives. And one of the first things to leave them is the anger, which is amazing. You know, and that's like in that in itself is a great accomplishment for me. You know, so if I can get the guys to live without that anger and that suppressed rage that they're walking around with all the time, it's a great achievement.
Well, I commend you in the work that you are doing.
Thank you.
I really am. I think, like I said, like this is gonna be all month, so people better get used to seeing my face.
Crazy, yeah. Well, great.
I'm not gonna stop. I'm not gonna stop.
Yeah.
It took me so long to even just get here. You know, I was a very shy person, very inward person. I'm talking about shy as far as social media wise. So when I became this poet, you know, I had a coach. I had 2 coaches that were like, no, you got to work on your deliverance, you know. And like, you know, and they really saw like the best in me. But then, you know, I had to do that for a season before I even became here. And so I wrote a piece called Deep Within. I'll share it with you later. But I had to
I love your poetry, by the way.
What's that?
I love your poetry, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
It's awesome.
Thank you so much. I wanted to address all of the feelings that I felt when I was dealing when the download happened. I call it a download.
Yeah.
And I kept saying to myself, like, this seems real. Like I'm remembering details and I'm remembering, you know, all the little memories that I have of it. And I had to ask my parents, like, did this happen to me by this person? And they were like, yes, all of it happened. So, I had to address all of the little feelings in order for me to get past it. And once I did that, I delivered it poetically, and it took like literally 3 minutes to put this piece together. Together, it's like 3 minutes long when I recite it, and
Mm.
um, I thought it was just for me, right? And then I said, you know what? Let me put some music behind it. Let me add it to my album. Let me just see how it's received. And then what I didn't know that it was going to do was that it was going to set free my grandchild.
Oh,
And it opened up a dialogue of something that she was holding.
oh, wow.
So when that happened, and of course I had to go through all the measures of, you know, um, going through the law to support her, that people, the support wasn't there for me, that I was not gonna be, this is my grandchild. We got to report
Yeah,
this. And
yeah,
so that was a little lengthy process, but the Lord was with us in that process. And so I realized she was only 8 years old when she revealed this. And it took that poetry piece for her to reveal it.
yeah,
I wonder who else it could set free. So I started on this, this wherever there was an open mic. And then from that I ended up being, I would be featured, and it was for this specific piece. I don't always bring it out, but I thank God that through therapy, now
yeah.
I'm, I God kind of like changed things for his glory, for my good. And so
Always.
I
Yeah,
realized that if it can help one person. And so when I go out and I do this piece, you don't know how many people line up at the end of this open mic or at the end of this event that I'm at, wanting to talk to me. And I have to give God all the glory for that. And so I'm just want to be used as an instrument. And
yeah.
that's it. You know what I mean? I feel like, but I know God has bigger plans for me. I don't know what they are, but I feel like, he's transforming us, from one day to the next day to whatever it is. But as long as we are willing, first of all,
That's
to
the
get the
thing.
help,
Yeah,
because we can have platforms all day, every day, but if the work isn't being done right, for the accountability for you, like
yep,
for you who are listening, for you who
yep.
are watching, you know what I mean? If you don't hold yourself accountable, um then it's not going to get done, and then you're going to
That's
stay
it.
stuck. you know God wants to use us in ways that I haven't even tapped into, and I know
Yeah.
that. So look at
Mm.
where I came from to where I am right now. And this is just,
It's the beginning. It's
that's
just the
it.
beginning.
That's
You
all it
know,
is.
it amazes me. I do every Tuesday night, I do an abuse recovery program, and it's 20 weeks, right? So, and I've had some ladies and men that have been in for the entire 20 weeks, and they're going into like the 10th week of the next, the same program. I just repeat it 20 every 20 weeks. We go over. So the 21st week, I'll have like an open evening where anybody who's a survivor who's been on the group can just come out and talk, and they can tell their
Mm,
stories or whatever they want to do. You know what I mean?
yes.
And there's a lady whose life has transformed. She's gone from being suicidal and depressed on a handful of drugs, every day and whatever, to 31 weeks later, sleeps without medication,
Mm,
talks about issues,
come
has her
on.
job. She has, she's getting her life together. She's set in place those boundaries. She tells people,
Whew.
hey, no, I won't, and in 31 weeks, her life has changed. And
Mm,
this is just the beginning, and I'm going like, wow, it's so. So when you say to me that your granddaughter was 8 when she started talking about this, I'm going like, that's freaking awesome. It's not awesome what happened to her, but the fact that she's got permission to talk about it and to start the healing process, And this is the thing is that, I found very interesting. I love Gabor Mate. I don't know if you listen to him much. And he said something, it's not the trauma that causes dysfunction in adult life. It's when you're splintered from your identity. Now that to me was like powerful, because the guys who go through trauma who don't have these dysfunctions in adult life because they have a very strong identity, they have a very strong sense of self, all right? So the trauma happened, it's cool, I can deal with it. But there's guys like me and you, I mean, I was 5 when this trauma started happening in my life, I mean, what identity do you have then? So I went through life not understanding who I was supposed to be, and I got to a stage where I was so filled with hate and anger that I was fantasizing about murdering one of the guys that had abused me. I'd actually planned it out. I'd bought knives. I was going to do this, And I realized something one day when I thought, I can't do it because I'm not that person. I'm not a murderer. I'm not somebody that wants to hurt people. I'm a healer. I want to help people, And it was difficult. I mean, from that age, I was 19 at the time, to 44, 43, when I started my healing process. I lived with this conflict in my head, because there was nobody there talking about it, going, hey, guys can be sexually abused as well. It happens. It's, and in this country, we know more boys than girls, I mean, so, and that's kind of my feeling is the reality around the world is going to be similar to what it is in South Africa. I'm sorry, because we still don't see sexual abuse by, I mean, I read a thing on Fox News today, whatever. I don't know much about the politics, but they seem to carry these stories of a teacher who raped one of her students, and she had a relationship with him. I'm going like, since when is that a relationship? That's statutory rape. Let's be real, So why are the journalists telling this false nonsense? You know what I mean? It's not true. He was raped. And when he gets to 30, 40, 50, where he realizes that he can't have an intimate relationship, that his life is a total mess, he's probably addicted to something. And then he goes, why? And I said, because journalists are lying to little boys and saying that, well, you had a relationship with an older lady, you're lucky. I'm going like, no, you're not lucky. It's going to stuff your life up. Let's be honest, And we need to start getting real, and we need to start calling people out and saying, hey, stop this nonsense,
That's right.
Stop this thing of it's only men that rape, because women rape too. In fact, the majority of boys in this country are raped by women, So we need to start telling the honest truth. It's not a gender problem. This is a human issue. Sorry, it's not a gender issue. It's a human problem, and the sooner we get that truth out there, the sooner boys and girls can start healing, Now, I found it interesting in the States. I mean, there's one of my friends, Pam, she was raped as a child by a nun, and I'm going like, that's cool. I'm pretty sure she wasn't the only one. And she openly says she wasn't the only girl. And she was then pimped to priests by the nuns. I'm going like, wow, that's a cool church. Wow. All right, But the fact is that she's now giving girls permission, girls who were raped by women, permission to start talking about that. Because up until now, girls have been silent. So, well, I was raped by a woman, and that's I'm the freak. Boys have been silent. I was raped by a woman. I'm the freak. I was raped by a man. I must be gay, or I must have, something. So all these issues that we develop in our heads, and it keeps us in silence. I mean, I said when I was 16, I walked into a rape crisis center, and I was confronted by pictures on the walls, and they were all girls who were victims and men who were perpetrators. And I was like, but that's not my story. I'm a little boy who's been raped by a woman. That's not my story. And I turned around and I walked out. I could have got help at 16, but I carried on further and further into my addiction, pornography, sex, alcohol, until like the age of 42, 43, when I stopped drinking at 42. And 40, somewhere around there anyway, 43, 42. And whereas I could have been helped before that. I could have been helped at 16. That's why I say your granddaughter being able to, again, given permission, being allowed to talk about her pain at the age of 8 is actually fantastic, because she can start healing. She can start developing that sense of identity that she really requires and needs in life. And, and it's like my daughter, I always say, I mean, she's messed up largely because I was messed up, right? So she would have to walk on eggshells all the time at home. And I'm going like, all I can do now is I know better, but all I can do now is love her better. So I just keep on loving her and loving her and loving her more until she gets better by herself. She develops her own sense of identity and her own sense of self and all that sort of stuff. And then she'll start healing. And she's come a long way in 5 years. I mean, she really has. It's been awesome.
I think it's beautiful that you realize, and this is all about being self-accountable, about how they had to walk on eggshells around you, and so all you can do now is you know better, so you do better. And how true that is. I have all adult children. There's 7 of them, but I have all adult children except for one. And so when I got pregnant at 15 and I had my first one, she has a different version of me, right? Because I was a child myself.
Yeah.
Um, and then when I started to have kids in my adult age, and then I adopted my stepkids, um, they got a different version of me because now they're healing with me during the process of their father. Okay. And so they got a different version of me. I was I was not well
Yeah.
emotionally, mentally. And now that they're an adult, I had to go back and apologize for my behaviors, um, for the way that I might have treated them, the negative things I might have said about them. Like, it was so important that I had to fix that bridge so that I
Yeah.
didn't burn my bridges with my kids.
Yeah.
And now because I know better, I can nurture the last one, right? My 10-year-old. I can nurture him in a way where I know better. I can support him better. And nowadays these kids are growing up because they're so um they're able to see social media, and social media is really destroying our
That's
children.
evil. Evil. Evil.
It is
Man.
evil. And
Mm.
so even my son who's 10, he's already had to be, you know, had to be evaluated twice, before he can go back to school. And I'm like, why is she like putting her stuff, her business out there on Front Street? Because if I don't say it, people, you're not gonna know how to deal with it because you're dealing with it, right? There's a lot of people. I'm
Yeah.
not the only one. I am not the only one dealing with the way that the kids are growing up these days. And so you
Mm.
really have to monitor your kids.
Yeah.
Now, like more so now than ever before,
Yeah.
and invest in them. Get them involved in sports, get them involved in group activities, things like that, away from them being so glued to their phones. And I get that, you need to have that, they need to have some sort of communication when they're not in your presence, for emergencies. But you're going to have to do much more than allow the social media or the internet to teach your kids, or the school to teach your kids. There's so much more that needs to
Yeah.
be done advocating for them because they're clueless.
Totally.
They are so
But
clueless around them. They have no idea
yeah.
what to look out for, who to look out for. And forget about stranger danger. Let's talk about the people who are related to us.
Yeah.
It was my girl cousin who was molesting me for several years, you
You
know?
see?
And I had to go through so much when it stopped. I had to go through so much just to deal with the lack of being molested. And so we
Yeah.
don't even talk about that. And it's like, you know, I and that's why I came up with that piece to actually address all of the little intricate details that we don't even talk about, because we don't know how. We
We
don't even know
don't.
how. And so
Yeah.
I'm going back to therapy that will help you dissect your thoughts.
Yeah. And that's the weird thing is because quite often, everybody goes like, oh, sexual abuse must be so horrible and it's violent and it's intrusive.
Was
But it's not always. Sometimes it's
not.
loving and it's intimate.
It
Sometimes
was.
it's the only attention that the kids are getting.
That's
It's
right.
the wrong attention, but it's love, and that's what they're so desperate for. That's what I was desperate for. I wanted attention. I just wanted somebody to love me and to build me up and say, wow, you're amazing, you're incredible, you're this and you're that. I sat the other day and I thought, you know what? I kind of, large part, I've forgiven my mom for whatever she did to me. And I was like, I don't know what her childhood was like. She grew up in Europe during the occupation, the Germans in World War II. I don't know what happened to her. She's not telling me. Yeah, cool, we carry on. And I sat the other day and I thought about it. She never did anything that was motherly. She never hugged me, said, come sit on my lap and tell me about your day. She wasn't there. She worked from the day I started school to the day I finished school. And she would come home at 5 and that would be it. When I was sick, it was like our maid who looked after me and took care of me. She cooked for me. She cleaned the house, and she was more of a mother to me. I was more impacted by her death than if my mom, she's still alive. If my mom passed now, I'd be like, nothing, But when our maid died, I was distraught. I was really broken, She was more of a mother to me. She's the woman who taught me love and values and that sort of thing. Wow. And we need to understand that also, the stranger danger thing. I mean, nowadays it's children 4 or 5 years older than our children that are doing this, And what worries me is where they're learning it. They're learning it off the internet. They're getting it off the smartphone. They're learning from pornography. I mean, we need to have these talks with our children. We need to say, porn isn't love. What you're seeing there is acting. It's rubbish. Right. It's not love at all. It's just bombastic sex, really. Mm-hmm. Most of the time it's rape, let's be honest. And, we need to teach them values. We need to teach them, if somebody touches you, we have to teach them how to shout no. Yeah. Because the kid, you have the fight, flight, freeze response, right? Mm-hmm. That's what a child has got. So when somebody grabs their leg and starts touching them up and all that sort of stuff, what's the kid going to do? He's going to freeze. Why? Because his parents haven't given him the skills to say, don't touch me, you pervert. Mm-hmm. When somebody grabs his penis or her vagina or something like that, she doesn't have the mental skills or the ability or the emotional stability to be able to scream out, don't touch me, pervert, and run away. We need to teach our kids these things.
That's right.
And like you say, I read an article the other day where it said this, the sale of dumb phones is actually going so one of the most popular phones for kids nowadays is the old Nokia 3110, which I'm going, or was it like a 3210 or something like that? So it's a dumb phone. It's not a smartphone. It can make phone calls and that's it. And I'm going like, hallelujah, because really, parents come along and they say, well, my kid needs to be able to get hold of me, if they're in danger or something like that. I'm going like, yeah, but there's actually more danger on a smartphone than anything else, So what you're doing is you're putting like the devil in their hands, and you're mm-hmm. saying, go play with him, Yeah. Man, it's insane.
So there are parental controls on the cell phones. So my son can't see or view YouTube, which he likes to be on. Yeah. So I like that feature a lot. So when he does watch YouTube, it has to be, here at the computer at home, where, I'm present.
Under supervision.
Yes, because the screen is big. I don't allow him to use headphones. So I need to be able to hear conversations.
Yeah.
And so we're constantly having to revisit. He's 10. So we're constantly having to revisit conversations. It's not just a one-time deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you think because he's bright, you think, he's going to listen to everything that I said. No, I do role play with him. Do you think that, the one time I do role play that he's going to get it? No, we had role play literally the day before he wrote in his journal how he wanted to hurt himself. And so like where I thought our conversation was well received, planned and thought out. I thought I was doing it, but it goes to show you there was a reason he couldn't share himself to me. So, and I took offense to that. And then I had to and then somebody had to chastise me and tell me, well, there was a reason why he couldn't come to you.
Exactly.
And I figured that out. Do you know why? I'm like, when the Holy Spirit spoke to me, he said to me, It was the fact that he didn't want to disappoint me. It wasn't that he didn't want to share it with me. He
Yeah.
didn't want to disappoint me
Pointy.
in the way
Yeah.
he thought, in the way that
Yeah.
he was thinking. And so I'm like, okay, now I'm just plastered all over the wall here. You know what I mean? Like, I'm such a terrible mom. Why didn't I get
I
that?
know.
Why
It's
was
horrible.
I upset?
Yeah.
Like, why am I upset at him for not telling me? What did
Yeah.
I do? And I started to take offense to myself. And I'm like, ho, just get yourself together because you are a good
Pull it
mom.
together, girl.
You are a good mom. You absolutely mean well. You support this child. He has all the support that he needs. He has all of the resources that he needs.
Yeah.
Get yourself together. So I had to, and I just want to be an encouragement to other mothers, right? That we're not going to have it all together. And we
And
can't get
fathers. And
mad,
fathers.
if they don't talk to us. But
Yeah.
what we certainly are in control of is having an open dialogue and a safe space for your kids to come to you, because if
Yeah.
all you do is yell at them and all you do is punish them or
Criticize and
spank
punish.
them or criticize them, or how can you think that would even be a safe environment for them to even come to you, even with the smallest ideas?
Yeah.
All right. And so, whew, this is
You know,
good.
you know what I teach? You know what I teach moms and dads? We have this kind of default. Like, I mean, that was, you hit it spot on. Your son didn't want to disappoint you, and we kind of purvey this idea that everything has to be nice all the time, right? So when they come back from school, how was your day? Did you have fun?
Yes.
Gee, did you play with your friends? Did you do this? And everything's always nice. He's always happy. We always have to be happy. And I always say to parents, you know what? Why don't you change things out? And when your kids come home from school, so sit down and tell me the worst part of your day.
Oh.
Tell me what hurt you, what made you sad. Give them permission to start talking about the crappy stuff. Mm-hmm. Then what you're doing is you're purveying this idea that they don't have to always be happy, that you can be sad. Sad is an emotion. Everybody feels it. We can't expect our children to be happy all the time. When a kid's 10, 11, 12 or whatever, and he's going for his first girlfriend and he gets rejected, of course he's going to be sad. It's a normal emotion, and there's nothing wrong with sadness. And we need to get over this concept that our children must be happy all the time, because it's just not true. It's impossible. You can't be happy all the time. I certainly can't be happy all the time. So let's give our children the space where they can talk about the tough stuff, where they can talk about what makes them sad, what hurt them, what made them cry. Somebody who caused them offense or was insulted them, or somebody who's bullying them or something like that. Give them permission, and then don't freak out. Okay? So if your son or daughter comes home and say, you know what happened to me today? So-and-so was bullying me. Wow, that's it. I'm going to that school and I'm going to beat them. I mean, then you've lost your kid. Then he's going to, I'm never telling my mom anything ever again. You know what I mean?
So true.
You know what I mean? So,
yes.
Right. So sit and listen. It's not your problem. It's theirs. And let them guide you on how they want you to interact and help. So when they say, well, so-and-so is bullying me, you go like, I'm so sorry. I mean, it was the best thing that ever happened to me in therapy. I went to like 5 psychologists, and I would tell them, I get to a point where I build up this trust thing, and I say to them, I just want to tell you something that, actually I was sexually abused as a child, and man, they just like tune out. It's like, bing, oh, really? Yeah. Okay, Earths, what up? Take me away. And I'm like, you're a psychologist, man. You're supposed to be trained. And eventually I got to this guy at a church. I mean, he was an old guy. I love him, Ken. He's my lifesaver. He's really. And I sat down and really I had these 3 sessions. And eventually I thought, you know what? I kind of like him and I trust him. He just had this kind face, he's just like a real kindly old man. And I said to him one day, I said, oh, by the way, Ken, I just want to tell you that I was raped as a child. And he looked at me straight in the eye and he just said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to hear that. Would you like to tell me more? Whew, man, that, what a powerful statement from a man who's not even a trained psychologist, and he's just like, I'm so sorry that happened. Would you like to tell me more? And that was it, man. I opened up. According to this church where I was supposed to have 6 sessions, I eventually ended up having like 15 sessions with him. He organized it so that I could have more. And it was just, I couldn't stop talking about all these things that had happened to us. And all he did was sit and listen, And that's how I encourage parents to respond to their children. I'm so sorry to hear that. You want to tell me more? How can I help you? Do you want me to help you? Do you want me to get involved? Make it their choice. You know what I mean? Make them, it's embarrassing for a little kid to go to school. It's like with mommy tone, like dragging them down, the sidewalk into the principal's office and screaming and shouting. I mean, the little kid's he's just waiting for the earth to swallow him. He's like, Mom, it's so embarrassing. And we don't see that as parents. Of course, we want to protect our children, but we're not doing them any good when we fight their battles. We need to teach them to fight their own battles, right?
I'm laughing, but it's so true.
It is. We mess up.
We are messed sometimes.
Yeah, we just, nobody gave me a manual when I got this kid. Nobody said, this is how you do it. I'm like, I've had to learn all this nonsense. It's pretty rough. And, like I've got a grandchild and a child, and they're the same age, and I'm learning from every day. You see, it's almost like it's almost like I'm like, I messed up the first one. Let me try again.
I messed up the other 6 for me. Oh my God. Oh my God. So my son is an uncle to a 14-year-old granddaughter and an 11-year-old grandson. So
wow. That's pretty cool. Yeah, mine is only 3 weeks apart. So my son is 3 weeks younger than his cousin, his nephew. Yeah. So the uncle's 3 weeks younger, but yeah. But you know what? I'm going to adopt. We're adopting a girl this year, my wife and I, and
congratulations.
So she's going to be quite a bit younger than her nephew. So but it's I've messed up the first, my daughter, and hopefully I'm getting it right with my son. It doesn't feel like it sometimes. I always joke with people. I always say, those anger issues that I thought I'd gotten rid of. Well, I haven't. It takes a 2.5-year-old to bring them out. Man, he's like scratches in places where I don't want him to scratch, But anyway, so we'll try with a girl again and see how it goes this time.
It's like I said, it's funny.
It is.
But thank you so much. Thank you so much. We're coming close to the hour. What was it? That you said you had. I love that you shared that you spoke to a pastor, and I love to hear that churches supporting this specific topic.
Yeah, they're not really. This is an issue for me. You know what I mean? Churches are, I did a talk at a Bible college conference one day, and I was woken up at 2 a.m. It was like the Lord was like, okay, I want you to pray now, and I went and I prayed for about half an hour. It was like 2 a.m. and I'm like, praying. And eventually I got the scripture that said, I've come not for the healthy, but the sick. I've come not for the saint, but the sinner. It was Jesus said that, right? And I was like, yeah, cool scripture. What do you mean? And eventually it kind of revealed to me that our churches are closed to the sick and the sinner, right? We get so self-righteous in churches. We wear our Sunday best. We put on our Sunday mask. And we go and we're like, I'm so holy, bro. I go to church every Sunday. I'm amazing, right? And don't you dare sit on my chair. And if you stink because you're homeless, don't sit close to me. Go shower first,
right.
Because I'm so holy, And I realized that this is true, So I have an opportunity. In June, I'm talking to a conference, about 400 and so many pastors, I don't know. And I'm going to do this, and I'm going to talk about this, and I'm going to kind of start giving them skills. And I got to, I think pastors need to realize that like half their congregation is damaged.
Oh, come on.
You know? And the reason why people are coming to church is because they've probably tried the therapy and they've tried everything else, and they're going like, well, if the world and the drugs and everything can't help me, then surely God should be able to help me. And you know what? He made us. He created us. He made us individually. Like, you know, he knit us together in our mother's womb. So if he structured our behaviors and our characters and all that sort of stuff, then surely he's the one that should be able to heal us, right?
Yes.
We don't need the medication. We don't need the psychiatrist and the psychologist. And so we need a relationship with God to begin healing. We need to understand who we are in him. Who did he make us to be? You know? And like that calling I got when I was sitting in my little office there contemplating suicide for the last time in my life. He says, if it hadn't happened to you, who would go on to help others? Well, that's my calling in life. He's called me to help his children hopefully heal from the abuses and the sexual abuse and all that sort of stuff that have happened in their life, you know. And now I realize who I am in him, and that healed me, right? That made me whole. And that gave me the will to carry on with life. So I've never thought about suicide again. I've never thought about touching another drink again. I'm, you know, I struggle with the lust aspect sometimes, you know, because it's pretty hard the way people dress these days. But largely, you know, I'm not perfect, and I don't have to be. I don't have to be, because I'm trying on a daily basis just to be a better person, you know. I'm trying and I'm praying and I'm going like, Lord, forgive me. I shouldn't have done that, you know. And I'm just trying to be better. I'm not perfect. I wasn't called to be perfect, you know. In fact, I think I'm called to be broken so that I can share my story and people can resonate with it. You know what I mean? And that's fair, because this is a struggle. And you know, guys often ask me, when do I stop healing? And I say, when you die, right?
Come on.
No, but isn't it true? Life is a constant growth, isn't it? So that's healing. That's a form of healing. I'm improving on a daily basis until I die, and then I'm made perfect in Christ, and then all is cool, okay? But until that point, I need to just keep going day by day and becoming a better person. That's healing, isn't it?
And it's a constant walk.
Constant.
You know, we got to pick up our own crosses. We've got our own things, you know.
You know, and the cool thing about them picking up the cross is, remember that Jesus picked up that cross and he started carrying it. And I mean, his skin was like non-existent in his back. So it was raw and it was painful, this wood digging into him and all that sort of stuff. And as he went, somebody came and was ordered to help him, right? And that's our lives. So initially, when we pick up that cross, it's so heavy and it's so painful. You get to a point where somebody comes and helps us. He picks us up and he says, yeah, let me help you, right? And then we carry on with life. And it gets easier as you get older, you know what I mean? So life doesn't have to be this constant mess. It can, and it does get better when you start dealing with your stuff, you know? I went through a midlife crisis. I could have gone out and bought a Harley Davidson or a Porsche or something like that and bedded more women. It wouldn't have healed me. And thank heavens I didn't have the money for it. So I had to deal with my stuff. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me, dealing with my stuff. Man, it was so empowering. You know, I could have been driving a Porsche, but I would have still been an idiot, isn't it? An idiot in a Porsche. Fantastic.
You are hilarious. Just be real with us. Yes. You'd have been sorry and dreadful with
a broken idiot in a Porsche.
Yes. But that just great. I'm glad that you're going to be going into churches to help churches develop a backbone for that, because I feel like it's often just like we don't specialize in that. But no, you can partner with people. You can partner with organizations. You guys are a nonprofit organization. That's all the more reason why you should be the first, you know what I mean, to welcome such a lot. I know that there's churches that do the addiction to drugs, and they have a program for the alcoholism.
Yeah.
Why not?
for the abuse.
Sexual abuse, you know?
And it doesn't even need to be sexual abuse. We can just
any kind of
cover
abuse.
Trauma, childhood trauma.
Almost,
We
yes.
help you recover from childhood trauma.
Yes.
And the other thing, it's like, I know we're running out of time, but the other thing I want churches to get away from is this: you have to forgive first.
That's not my cup.
It's a process. It's something that you go through, and eventually you get to a point where the last part of the process is, I forgive the people who hurt me, and I'm not forgiving them to let them get away from it,
right?
Get off with it scot-free. I forgive them so that I can recover.
I also feel like forgiveness is really for yourself. Forgive yourself for holding yourself hostage and thinking any of this was your fault,
exactly,
or just thinking that you had it coming, that this was your fault in any form of form of thought, that often goes and plays in the minds of trauma and survivors, trauma victims and survivors.
It's kind of wedged in that thing, but kids don't have the ability to lay the blame where it's supposed to be. So we always blame ourselves. And the problem is when you start getting abused. So I was abused at 5, right? I don't know how old you were when that happened, but our emotional development kind of stunts at that age. Mm-hmm. So you can be like 45 and you behave like a 7-year-old, emotionally. So like, everybody's had this like work colleague where they don't get their way and they throw this little tantrum, like, you know what I mean? That's emotionally the guy's stunted or the girl's stunted. They're like 7-year-olds, and they just immediately, I look at them and I go, childhood trauma. And then I walk up to them and I go, you want to talk about your childhood with me? You want to go through some, we'll just talk, and you can tell me whatever you want. And I can guarantee you pretty much that they've suffered some form of abuse or more, it's there, and so, but we don't know how to deal with it. So we need to grow emotionally. That was the awesome thing. It's like I was 45 and I had the emotional capacity of like a 25-year-old. It's like, wow, I'm getting more to my age, closer to my age, but I'm not. I'm not happy about it. But that's life. It progresses. That sucks, but that's what happens.
3 years. I'm like 3 years away from 50, but I'm looking forward to it. I think I was afraid to ever share my age, but I'm realizing that I'm so much better now than I've ever been before. And good luck to the man God has stored up for me, because I know it's just gonna be amazing, because he's gonna be whole, I'm gonna be whole, and we're gonna just work this through. Be a power couple.
That's the amazing thing, is that as we heal, right, we start making better choices for ourselves. Why? Because we value ourselves.
There you go.
Right, so an abusive guy comes into your life and you look at him and you go like, I don't got no place for that. Thank you, bye. It's cool. Isn't it true?
It is true.
But as long as we don't heal, then I hear these people, they're just like, I always get involved with the same kind of person. I go, well, that's because you're not fixing yourself, right?
Right.
So you keep attracting what it is that you're used to. When you start fixing yourself and you start putting in place those boundaries, going like, you know what, I'm not going to do this. That's a boundary, And, And my second wife, and I got remarried, and she was like, I was like, I'm going to move in with you and we're going to live together. And she goes, no, you're not. I'm going like, huh? What? She's like, we're going to sleep together. No, you're not. We have to be married. I'm like, huh? What freaking planet did you fall off? And it was amazing, because I actually had to sit and talk to her and get to know her. Right? And she actually got to know me, and she discovered the worst aspects of me. And it's like, I'm amazed she stuck around, but she did. Silly woman.
She knew what she was doing. Well, the God in her knew what needed to be done.
Exactly, and I kept saying to her, and she's quite a bit younger than me, and I kept saying to her, listen, are you sure? Like, there's a big age difference, and I would rather you marry this guy. He's into you. And she was going, no, I'm cool. I know what I want. And I was like, yeah, good. And we've been married like 6 years now, and I'm happy. We have a kid together. Yeah, but you know what? I wouldn't have gotten to know myself better if it wasn't for her having such strong boundaries in place, going like,
Whew.
no, you're not going to do that.
Well,
No,
thank
you're
God
not
you
going to do
stuck
that.
around. And look, the fruits of your labor.
Yeah, I
Maybe
want to
more
kill him.
sugar.
I want to kill him sometimes.
Oh,
But
this was
yes,
so good. Oh, thank you for being so, oh my gosh, just down to earth. I didn't know what to expect because I don't know you. And you
well, now
just
you
like,
do.
no problem, but now I do. Oh my God, I'm going to be a fan for life, a supporter for
Oh,
life. I
oh,
so
thank you.
appreciate you. And this won't be the last time you and I are going to get together. We're going to get together again. I don't know
I love
where, I
that.
don't know
I love that.
when, but you are awesome. And
Oh,
please
thank you.
follow him. I don't put anybody on this platform that I didn't think is worthy of a definitely a share, a like, and a follow. So follow this man. You don't know who it's gonna bless. You don't know who it's gonna free
Yeah.
up, and that's what I always say at the end. Is there anything you'd like to leave with us?
I want to just like encourage you. Keep doing what you're doing. You're awesome. You write amazing poetry. You're touching lives.
Thank you.
Keep going. Just keep going. Keep working on you. Love yourself. Look into the mirror and go, "Hey, Nidhi, I love you. You're amazing." And
Amen.
and don't cringe at that expression, and just keep doing what you're doing because it's awesome. We need another billion people like you doing what you're doing. It's true. There's so many broken, hurting people out there. Everybody needs help. And yeah, thanks for giving us the platform to talk about this. It's been
Yeah.
awesome. I've loved chatting to you.
It was great chatting with you. Don't go away, okay? I'm gonna
Righty.
end and just stay with me. Oh, and we had Miss Yvonne. Oh, Miss Yvonne, you gotta follow this man. She does. She has a group called LASA, so Life After Sexual Assault, and
Okay.
she's also an advocate. She is a powerhouse. I think when
Ah,
we did our conference, I'm gonna send you the conference so you could see her on there. She ended us out. She did us justice.
good.
Um, she's amazing. I hope you guys get together too. But I'll send you everything you need to know. One second.
Awesome. Thanks.
Bye, y'all. Thank you for tuning in. Like, share, and just you never know who's gonna free.